Hello everybody, welcome back to Road to Master. I hope you all have an amazing day. We're starting off, we've got the black pieces against a 1588 from the United Kingdom. E4. What do we do against E4? E5. Of course, you all know this. Hopefully we do better than we did in yesterday's Puzzle Rush, because that was absolutely abysmal. And we've got a Vienna. A Vienna's an interesting opening. It's not doing anything really. It's defending a pawn that's not being attacked, and yeah, it's just nothing much really. There are a few things you can do, like an F4, a D4, or you could go into like an Italian or a Spanish as well. But we're just going to go ahead and match it. Apparently called the Max Lange defense. I think I said that right. Now I'm just hoping for sort of a transposition into an Italian sort of situation. So we're gonna continue with our usual Italian plan, and it looks like they're doing a similar thing. And chess.com after D3 is saying this is a bishop's opening, Berlin Vienna hybrid variation, which basically translates to it's a weird Italian. I'm pretty sure. Now we can do a bishop c5 would work. I don't think a d5 would work right this instance. Or we could go knight to a5. I think works as well. Just hitting this bishop and trading that off as soon as possible, really. So let's go ahead with that one. We've got to be careful of some sacrifices, but I don't think any of them particularly work at the minute. And we're happy to trade this off. Not even immediately. We could do something first, or we could trade it off straight away with a d5. Several options. Several options. Maybe a bishop c5 would be nice. Yeah, maybe a bishop c5. And then we're looking to castle, and maybe we've got some knight g4 ideas as well. We would have to play a d6 first, of course, though. And as soon as they try to free up this bishop, or they try to do something fancy with the knight, we're just happy to trade off with knight takes b. That's a weird one. They have done the same thing. Yeah. We could just take the bishop now. It's an interesting move, is that? Knight to a4. Copy our idea. So we could try like a b6 with a c, b takes c. And then play for a d5 break. Oh gosh, I can't draw arrows at all there. Takes. And then play for a c6 d5. And after takes, we've still got these three in the middle. That's an option. We could try save the bishop, although we have moved it to c5 for a reason. So I'm not a big fan of that. Or we could try this maneuver where we take first, then give them a little check, and after c3 we drop back. The problem with this one is that there is the discovered attack from the rook as well. So maybe we just play like a b6. Then it frees up our bishop a bit to go potentially to b7 and put some pressure on the king side that way, which could be quite nice. Yeah, maybe that's not bad. The problem with that is I'm not a big fan of c4. Then it seems to lock up the center a bit, and doesn't seem particularly nice. So we could just try keep the bishop pair and drop back to like e7. Then we just play with the misplaced knight is an option. So I think we just take the bishop anyway. I don't think bishop to d4 works because we can just get kicked. And then we have to trade off the bishop. So let's just try to keep this bishop with a bishop to e7. Covering our king side. Like I said, f4 is a move they can play. It's quite a common idea in a lot of Viennas. Obviously, it's similar to the King's Gambit as well. But then you see this benefits the dark square bishop because when they castle, this diagonal is going to be open now, which prompts us to maybe play a b5 sort of push, potentially, just to support that. Maybe a d6 could work, although an f5 isn't particularly nice. Then it defeats the whole purpose of keeping the bishop on. So let's just let's play e takes, and we'll just play like this. I don't think we want a queenside castle. It looks very scary, especially with the open file and the bishop pointing towards there. So kingside castle doesn't seem too bad at all. And we've got to be a bit careful here because they have potential for a bit of a strong attack. I want to play d6, but again, it's locking in the bishop. So maybe a b5 here wouldn't go amiss. Then we can drop the bishop back to b6 as well. Although after knight there, we need to find something to back up this pawn. c6 isn't ideal because we want squares for our light squared bishop. So it looks like it could be an a6, which I'm not too unhappy with. I don't think they've got anything going on over here just yet. So let's go ahead and play b5. And then our bishop's coming out, our other bishop's coming out, and everything's looking quite nice. a6, I believe we said. Because they have no a pawn break, so they would have to move this knight again and then break that way, which I would be fine with. And that seems a very passive move. I mean, it stops the diagonal, I guess. But what was the point of moving the bishop there anyway? Why not just move the bishop there in the first place? So I'm pretty happy with that. And maybe we have a little push here. Maybe. e5 is obviously a reply to that. And I'm wondering if knight g4 could work, hitting this bishop. Although the bishop can come away. And ideally we're looking for a d5 sort of thing. But we have nothing to support that at the minute because they could just take with the two pieces and be fine. So yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. And I'm wondering if, I'm wondering if we have any sort of checks, but I don't think that quite works. Oh, what we could do is a bishop b7 first, although the pawn push then is a bit better for them. At least with bishop, with pawn break first. If they take, we can just do something like that. So I think we push d5 now while we can, and then we're not too upset with them pushing because it is a weak sort of unsupported pawn, and we have pawn breaks with c5 if they try to lock up as well. So after the bishop goes there, covering this pawn, I'm wondering how we can hit that again. And maybe we play like a c5. We could also drop back, but it doesn't really do it. And it's blocking in our light square bishop as well. The problem is after h3, I don't really want to drop back to h6 because it gives them a chance to trade off and weaken my king side. So maybe it is probably best to drop back to d7 because the bishop's coming here anyway. They can take this pawn, which I didn't see, to be honest. Which is fine, potentially. We need to save our bishop. Or do we, even? Going there and letting them take is making immediate threats. And after knight takes, queen takes, we have some threats on the king side as well. Let's do that. I think that's probably our best chance of counterplay. Potentially, I'm not quite sure. We'll see. We'll see. I think this pawn's weak either way, and we still have c5 as an option. Because the queen and knight both now support this square. And these double pawns, potentially after a c3, and then takes, they're going to be weak. We also potentially have an f6. Could work. They have no light square bishop to hit the diagonal. And it still leaves our c pawn to stop any pawn pushes. Things after takes, knight takes. No, the bishop's pinned. Yeah, let's go f6. And we're just trying to undermine these pawns, I think. Could potentially work. Again, not quite sure though. It's a bit improv at the minute, to be honest. A bit improv. They do have d5, but I think I don't think that quite works. I think we can just take. Like we said, c7 is covering the pawn push. But yeah, it doesn't seem too bad. I think it doesn't seem too bad. I would have liked to keep the bishop pair. But they're still not castled, and that's quite a big problem for them. Especially because they've introduced these really weak diagonals. And if we can get our rook in the game as well, with a rook lift or whatever, that would be quite nice. But yeah, it's double-edged, I think is the word. There's no check here because they can push and the queen covers this pawn. But potentially if this pawn ever moves with like a takes, then potentially we have like a check with like a bishop takes, or maybe a bishop takes, pawn takes, and then check. Or a check that way even, could be nice. Yeah, so they sort of had to castle there, I think. I think we just win a pawn back here. That's about it. Yeah. So they've gotten safe at the cost of a pawn, which is alright with us. So we just take, and we get the material back. It does open up their bishop a bit, but like we said, our weaknesses are on the light squares. We've got the dark squares under quite good lock, I believe. There might be some way they can exploit it. Bishop there is interesting. But maybe we just move the queen up to e6 or something. And then potentially there's threats. With bishop takes knight and then queen takes bishop, somewhat along those lines. But yeah, I hope you're all enjoying the content at the minute. It feels like the channel's sort of slowed down a bit. I hope I've not changed anything that you guys like, but the content will keep coming, and I'll keep trying to improve on everything I think can be improved on. But yeah, I'll still be here no matter what, really. I just enjoy making the videos, So if you guys are liking them, if you guys aren't liking them, let me know. I can change anything about anything, whatever interests you. I can do. You know, we've got the sort of schedule. It's sort of a schedule with the puzzle rush on Sunday and the lesson on the Wednesday. I can do more lessons. I can do more puzzle rushes. I can do more opening theory. More anything really. But yeah, just drop us a comment. I'll see what I can do. We've had a comment recently asking about the Scandinavian, which is something I can definitely cover. And yeah, they got Bishop G5, which is interesting. Knight there didn't work, and maybe they're looking to get the rook across. I would have liked to play bishop takes straight away, but unfortunately they get the rook at the end of it, and we just get a pawn, which doesn't quite work out. So we're just going to go up to e6. The thing is, if the rook moves, then potentially we have some interesting things. Some very interesting things, actually. And they don't decide to do any of that. They just go for this, and they're looking for knight takes there. But we can take with check. And they would have to take with pawn. And then after that, I think we're just looking too nice to pass up, to be honest. So let's go ahead with that. I think if they move the rook over, that would be a huge miscalculation from them. Simply because knight takes with check is devastating. So after knight takes, queen takes, A, we're hitting the bishop. B, we can move up to e2 to cover this mating threat. We could potentially trade off rooks. We can move over with a check. We can do all sorts, really. We could play a c5 to try to stop any pawn pushes. We can bring the other rook over to cover the file. It's free roam. Free reign. I'm not sure what the saying is. Either way, we've got opportunity, really. That's what I'm trying to say. We have lots of opportunities. And it's looking quite nice. It is, to be fair, an opposite coloured bishop, so we need to either win in the middle game or defend quite well in the end game. Because the longer the game goes on, the less chance we have. So we have two options, really. We could do something like a queen g6, tying the bishop down to the mate. Although after queen d2, everything sort of sorts itself out. h6, bishop can go back, and the queen covers the mate. We could go queen d5 straight away, hitting the knight, but the same sort of thing applies. If we trade off rooks, the queen can just take, and then it's covering the mating threat as well. So yeah. We could try to pin the knight with a queen b6, although the king can just move because it is covered. Let's go to g6. Yeah, and queen d2. Oh, and actually we can go rook d8. Pinning the knight to the queen. And then potentially like a c5 or something. works quite well, I believe. I don't think there's a wrong with that necessarily. We will see though. I think Queen D2 is the only sort of move that works. I don't think H4 works. It's very scary after H6. I don't think you can really recover from that one, to be honest. But, you know, they seem to be finding the thought-provoking moves. Is that the right word? Thought-provoking moves. And hopefully we are doing our best at finding our own thought-provoking moves. Because what is chess about other than asking questions of your opponent, you know? And seeing what their reply is. I think Queen D2 is the only move. If you move the knight back to cover the bishop, I take the check, and then it's game over. Rook there won't work because of the pin for the mating threat. Queen can't cover the bishop any other way, I don't believe. And the bishop is hanging, so you can't really do else. There we go. So what do we do now? Was it a rook? No, rook d8 doesn't work because bishop takes, and the queen is covering the mating threat. I would very much love a knight f3, but that doesn't work for several reasons. c5 could work. c5, knight back, knight takes, rook takes, pawn takes, push could work actually. Knight back there. Now the queen is no longer covering the mating threat, so h6 works. So I believe c5 could be the move. Let's go for it. Let's go for it. Bishop there's an interesting one, but rook takes and then take knight. It's pretty simples. Knight back. Yeah, I think we're just good. They've disconnected, apparently. I'm not sure if you guys can see that. You probably can. I hope... Yeah, I think that was just a little internet issue. Hopefully it's all good. I would very much like to finish this game. I have a coaching lesson tonight, which I'm super looking forward to. My second one with this new guy. Really looking forward to it. He got me doing some endgame work in my spare time. So I think I said I've been reading Dvoretsky. Super amazing book. The Endgame Manual. If you haven't read it yet, definitely would recommend it. And we're going to be, I'm not sure what we're covering tonight. I think we're going to be doing a few puzzles, positional puzzles, sort of. And him explain that to me. I think we're going over some studying tips as well. How to properly study from a book, which seems simple, but I think he'll have some tricks for me to help me sort of remember stuff better and implement it into my game, which I'm looking forward to, because studying is one of the harder parts of the game, and it's where people like myself seem to get sort of stuck, because you read the stuff and you learn the stuff, but then how do you actually implement it into your game is the question. But yeah, I'm super looking forward to that. It should be pretty much after I finish editing and uploading this video. It should be pretty straight away. So it's busy stuff. This week we're going to be going over knights and bishops in the endgame lesson, which is always a bit of a pain. They are the tricky parts of chess. And knights and bishops, and it's what makes chess interesting, because if it was just straight moving pieces, it would be the most boring game in the world, but because you got these tricky little pieces, that's what makes the game interesting. So that the end game stuff is a bit less what's the word, not strategy, skill base, and it's more skill base isn't really the right word, but I think it's close enough. It's more just memorizing things with knights and bishops, because they're so complicated. It's hard to fit everything about them into rules almost. So you've got because in the end game one you had like skills you could use like the triangulation, the opposition, stuff like that. Like tricks. It's less trick based and more just memorization, really. So it might be a bit boring, but it's super useful. I wouldn't include it if I didn't think it was useful. But yeah, hopefully that helps you. I know it helped me when I was first doing that, and then now that I'm doing end games in a more advanced sort of light with the Dvoretsky stuff, I know it's helping me even more. But yeah, enough rambling. I need these people to play a move. This person to play a move. This looks like his name's Teddy. My guy Teddy. Please make a move. It's been a while. I think, to be fair, there isn't many moves he can do that don't lose a piece. Yeah, to be honest. Queen there's an interesting one. But I feel like we've got stuff we can do against that. Maybe knight there. Although then queen there is interesting. And they go, yeah, so they did something similar, hitting this knight. Which is probably smart. Probably smart. Rook takes is a thing, because obviously if rook takes, then we can just take this knight. King takes would be the critical line, though. I'm wondering if we have anything after that. Anything at all. Maybe. Rook e8, and then we do rook takes, king takes ourselves. But then queen there is really annoying. With check, king goes back. Yeah, and then you got a tempo to move the queen. Move the knight, sorry. Oh, this is going to require some calculation. I shouldn't have waffled for too long. Yeah. Whew. Interesting stuff. Oh, we also have knight to f7. Could potentially work. But then knight to e6 could also potentially work. Then after knight takes, rook takes. Yeah, doesn't really work out for us. That's a nice move. Very nice move. There. King, rook takes, king takes, queen. Check, king back. Yeah, and then you can just take the knight. How? Yeah. Maybe rook takes them. Yeah, rook takes, king takes. And then we drop the knight back. Seems better. Both are hanging. And if knight back, bishop takes. Yes, let's do that. Let's do that. First thought, best thought. I think I said that right. I'm not quite sure. I think you get what I mean. Yeah, king takes, best move. And then we just drop the knight back. I think we should be all good here. Rook there, we just take the bishop. Knight there is interesting. Knight there is very interesting. Check. No. Yeah, knight there's probably their best move. And then we do something. We could potentially even do bishop. No, because queen takes works. This rook's annoying. That's such a good move, is rook e1. I didn't see that at all. And then the pawn is hanging as well, which I don't really want to lose. Maybe we just trade off. I don't really wanna. I don't really wanna. The annoying thing is the knight's covering this square for my rook as well, so I can't do a discovered attack. Not set up a discovered attack either. Like, yeah. Yeah, good move, man. Good move. We could do rook e8. Could work. Because we trade with queen and then take... Yeah. Yeah, let's do that. Knight takes, pawn takes, king takes, and then we're... Oh, queen takes is an option, actually. No, but queen takes and knight takes. I'm worried about mating threats. Queen takes, then knight takes. And the queen's covering the square, which is nice. And then if king takes, then queen takes, so the queen's covering the d8 square. Oh, at the end of it, though, the bishop's hanging. Oh, that's so interesting. Do we take the pawn and then grab the free piece? No, but then this pawn's hanging. Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh. Ooh. You are playing some moves, my friend. Some proper moves. So after knight takes, bishop takes. That I've not seen. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. 58 seconds. 55 seconds. Takes. Rook takes. And all the mates are covered. Yeah. I think. Yeah. Wow. The bishop hanging at the end of it, so it's just going to be a trade-off, I think. But we don't have enough time to calculate anything properly. Oh, do you know, half an hour sounds like a lot of time until you actually play the game, and then you've got no time at all. Yeah, king moves is the best. Oh no. Oh, we miscalculated this. Royally. Royally miscalculated this. Because rook takes queen there, brilliancy. It's all over. It's all over. Gosh. That no, I ran. Yeah, I think that's just losing. That's wild. That's a brilliant game. I love that one. Well played. Well played. That was so cool. I love that game. Yeah, and it's just a roller coaster at the end. 78.1 for him. 77.6 for me. 1800 versus 1750, so it's a close game. Vienna. Yeah, so the knight a5 is the book move. And apparently we can just take bishop c5 isn't as good. Although it's 0.2 pawn difference. So, yeah. And we were right to take the bishop. And then apparently you go there with the plan of going there. Let's have a look at that and see how it plays out. Oh, and you go back to e7. So you're just doing that to weaken their pawn structure, I guess. F4 is interesting. And we just take. And apparently rather than castles, it just wants d5 straight away. Which is interesting. b5's good. a5 not as good. Apparently it wanted b4. Which doesn't that just allow the knight back? Apparently the knight doesn't even want to go back. It wants to go to b5 and hit this pawn. At which point you play d6. Doesn't that not lose this pawn though? Why can't they just do a cheeky rook takes? Oh, the knight's getting trapped after a bishop to d7. That is why. Yep. Get you. I get you. Bishop back is a miss. Oh, they can take the pawn. They can take the pawn. Oh, gosh. Yeah, we missed that one. We should have seen that as well. It still wants b4, but d5 is just still good. And we thought the push wasn't as good. And apparently knight g4 is the better move. I wasn't a fan of moving back afterwards. But, yeah, we can see. We can see. No, not that one. 97. Best move. Show moves. Not that one. Where are we? There we go. 97. Best move. Show moves. There we go. Queen d2, apparently. No clue. Does it continue? F6. Takes. Takes. Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense. Makes sense. Where are we? Yep. 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 They can still take this pawn. That's hanging for ages, by the way. Moving back's a bit passive, but it's still sort of equal. We've gone from 1.2 to 0.2. Bishop there is not as good. Apparently you can take the pawn because it's a discovered attack on this knight. Makes sense. You always see these things straight away when you play them, replayed them. It's crazy. D4 is good, and we break with F6, which is best as well. And then Queen E6 is best as well. Takes. I thought they would take here, and it seems pretty even. Oh, where were we? Spoilers. Yeah, it seems pretty even if knight takes, but apparently 2.5 for us now. And we go Queen G6, which is best as well. They played the best, and we played the great move as well. Best move. And And the rook there is a tricky one, but apparently rook takes is best. And then you play the rook f8, which I didn't think worked, but apparently does. Best move. Show moves. King g1. What? So rook takes, you've got the mate. Where's the knight going? Knight goes back. Then you have check. Maybe. We can analyze this one. So the knight goes back there. Then you have knight takes, and then that's scary. Knight goes back there, and you have queen f2 check. King h1. Oh, queen takes g2. Yeah, duh. And yeah, that seems about all the logical choices. But apparently h4 is the computer line to free up the back rank space. C takes knight, rook takes knight. And you just sort of play on from here. You're evens, Stevens, but with a better position. Apparently it's 3.6. You check. And hit the queen with the hit on the pawn as well. And yeah, they have to sack the queen for the rook. Fair enough, I get that. So the knight goes back isn't ideal. It's gone from 3.6 to 0.7, so it's still slightly better for us, but not very good. And we can show the moves here for the knight. Yeah, and they played the right thing, which is knight to e6. Rook out, and then queen there apparently is a blunder. This is so complicated, though. So complicated. Apparently knight takes just works, and I get that now because the queen's looking at the rook. But the problem is, if you move this rook at all, there is actually some mating threats. Especially if rook takes knight, they have the brilliant move of queen to e8. Only move, and then the rook takes, which is a really nice little thing to spot. And I didn't know what to do here. Now I see it, that's the obvious move. Threatening to win the piece. Obviously the bishop's hanging, but you get the knight at the end of it. Queen f5 completely loses because you're no longer looking at the rook. And we can sort of see past this point here. I had no clue what to do. I was thinking knight to d6. But then you just have queen to g7, mate. Yeah. There was also, yeah, the same tactic applies if you take the knight. I don't know what else I was sort of thinking. Maybe knight takes, but then queen takes g7 again. So I wonder, yeah, I wonder if, what about that there? Does that still, that's drawing apparently, which is interesting. So if queen takes knight, bishop to e4 apparently blocking the rook, so you can then take the knight. Aha! And they don't have the same main tactic as well. That's quite a cool little line. Decent idea because you're covering both the rook and the bishop. But anyway, that's the game. Super, really fun game. Really enjoy playing it. You don't play the Vienna often, and it's like a more, it's like a version of the Italian, but it's like a slow burner, you know. Really interesting. So we'll get to where we ran out of theory, which is here, and we'll look for a game where black wins. So this is Jan versus Magnus. Magnus wins. Takes, break in d5, like we discussed, and then the queen comes to h5, which is brave to say the least. Hitting the pawn, and then you have the usual sort of mating tactics, and wow, you let them have it, you let them go for it. If they take, you've got queen to e7, trading off queens if you so desire. You don't have to though. Apparently bishop to e7 is what's played, and then you counterattack with the fork on the rook. They don't let that happen. You go to pin the queen, but the bishop blocks with the rook pin. And then you just sort of play on. And apparently this is even. White is up a pawn, but I guess you have strong bishops. Some queen shuffling going on. Black's looking to trade off queens, I think. White doesn't want any part of that. And apparently they're happy to trade queens here. Apparently this is different than the position before. No clue at all. And then h6 g5 is not something you see every day. But yeah, so what's happening? This knight's sort of out the game. Although it can come to here, which seems okay, but I guess you're getting kicked out straight away. Which means these pawns aren't moving, which means this pawn's weak. This pawn's also weak because of the same problem. And black has control over the files. So white has to go retreat their knight so they can push these pawns to cover this pawn. And black decides to connect their rooks rather than leaving one open. Yeah, push the pawn, kick the knight, and the knight moves out the way. And this knight's doing a similar thing so they can maybe push an f4. And you can see now the amount of tempos black's getting. Potentially it's worth the pawn. This knight maneuver is wild. Back to h2 to h1 to f1, and then where are you going to g3 maybe to get into this outpost? You know, that's crazy. Yeah, f3 push, and now white would ideally want his rooks over there, but that's never happening because there's all these pieces in the way. So that's a good weakness to make. And the bishop's coming to h4. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe just to free up space for the knights, which they do. Black moves their bishop for some reason, maybe to push the f-pawn. Bishop takes, and then you let the pawn push with tempo, and you let the pawn push with tempo again, and you don't take. You don't move your bishop because you get the counterattack on the rook, and this is a super, super strong square for the bishop. Oh god, we lost it. Where were we? There we go. They move the rook back so it's connected as well, because there was the tactic of takes and then take the rook as well. So they fixed that. Bishop now moves back, and then the f5 push, stopping the play of the knight. And the knight goes to hit this super strong bishop, which is fair enough, but black would never do that in a million years. Not their strongest piece. And that's quite a cool spot for the knight. It would mean black would have to trade off their light square bishop if it ever goes anywhere. But they play on the other side of the board because that's what grandmasters do apparently. And then rook to e2 is coming in. So you're hitting this. And potentially you're looking at some bishop to c5 stuff hitting the bishop as well. But obviously they don't let that happen and they trade off. Trade off again. And now it's bishop pair versus a knight and bishop. All the pawns are on one side of the board. However, this weakness is a key thing to point. And then the colour of the squares of the pawns as well. So Magnus with the bishop pair is happy sticking his pawns on the dark squares, so white can never actually defend their light squared pawns, which is the smart thing to do. And it means black's sort of, yeah, you could potentially hit those pawns, but you'd have to start on the c pawn, which is well covered by the bishop, so that's never happening. And it sort of reserves white to defending. You can try and make some play with the knight, but the knight versus the bishop pawn is just not a good fight. Not the bishop pawn, the bishop pair. Black goes in to hit the weak pawns. The bishop's coming in. And that's nasty with the sort of x-ray coming in. The rook comes in to defend. And the king, I'm guessing, is looking to come into e4, which is super scary. White pushes a pawn for some reason. Oh, to break up black's pawns and make them weak. Black just doesn't care apparently, and takes the double pawns. And now it's the same coloured bishop endgame. But it looks like white's getting an extra pawn out of it, which they don't take apparently. Because maybe they're scared of mating threats. So they go and hit the black rook instead, gives a check, and the king comes in, which isn't ideal. There's threats of rook to b2 if that ever happens, which black won't let. And then rook to h2 as well is equally as much a threat. And then yeah, it's boxing in the king a bit, to be fair, with threats of bishop to d2 as well. Not very nice. Push the pawn, try the best, checks, and then this is just sort of unstoppable, to be honest. It's mating 4 apparently. And white resigns. Anyway, that was a super cool game. A lot of tactics in there. Some really good bishop versus knight work, which I would expect from them, but you know, it's cool to have a look at that. But anyway, this video has gone on long enough. Really fun game. I hope you all enjoyed watching that. You learnt something potentially. But anyway, thank you all for watching. Please like if you liked. Please subscribe if you really liked. And I'll catch you guys all tomorrow. Bye bye.